Yes.
Oh, there's Teresa. Great. Okie dokie. I'm gonna get y'all muted. Hi, Terry. Glad you made it. I muted you, but hi. All right, get your if you need to light your candles or burn your whoops. Oh, come on. Burn your sage sticks. Well, maybe not. Oh, whatever. Set your stage, y'all, for our class tonight. So tonight's practice is really truly about just intentional and deliberate rest. And where this comes from is I met with a client yesterday that I hadn't seen in some time, just for a quick follow-up check-in and to work on some other things going on in her world. And she's so tired. She did some extensive traveling in the spring, Israel, and just some extensive travel, and got sick, got a sinus infection while she was overseas, and ended up taking antibiotics over there, came home, thought she had knocked it out, but within a week was on another round. Anyway, long story short, in the course of a month and a half, almost 2 months between February and the end of March, she went on 4 rounds of antibiotics, trying to knock out this massive sinus infection thing going on. And so she's on the other side of that now, and she just doesn't understand why she doesn't have any energy. And I mean, I resonated, I related to that. I mean, it's like, okay, the sinus infection is gone, and I'm more or less back on track. We're still working on digestive stuff and whatnot, but she gets up, she sleeps well, she gets up in the morning and does her gardening, and she has energy in the morning, but she says after lunch she's just crashing. She says, I find myself sitting down on the sofa, the next thing I know it's like 2 hours later and I wake up. And so anyway, we talked about some other things, but with regards to her resting, it's almost as though, not almost, I mean, she just needed to give herself permission to carve out that time every afternoon while her body's recovering, while she's trying to fortify and replenish her strength and her immune system, to let herself have permission to rest and like be deliberate about it, carve it out in the schedule. And, after lunch, take a short walk with your dog and then come in and actually like, set your alarm and give yourself permission to sleep. So there's actually boundaries around it and parameters around it, rather than just, you know, randomly falling asleep and then waking up and beating yourself up because, oh, damn, I had so much I wanted to do this afternoon. So anyway, we talked a lot about being intentional and deliberate around rest, and how just important that is for all of us, but especially when you're still on the tail end of just lambasting your body. And I don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for antibiotics, to be sure, but 4 rounds inside of 2 months is like really intense. And so she's got a lot of recovering to do. So I got to thinking about how even when we're not on the tail end of 4 rounds of antibiotics, how we still, I think it's very common for women, at least a lot of the women that I see in my practice, to not want to succumb to rest. So anyway, I think it's important. Deliberate rest, intentional rest. So that's what tonight is all about. So we're going to lay low, take it slow, just a couple of somatic moves at the beginning to just kind of loosen up our fascia, our tissues, and our joints, and to release any pent up vata. And then we're going to just hit it and do some long restorative, classic restorative holds. So, a blanket. So your bolsters, your blocks, and a blanket on standby. And then just come down onto your sticky mat on your back, please. Oh. Let your feet come to the mat. Take your feet a little wider than your hips and let your knees drop inward against one another. Place a hand on your belly and a hand on your low ribs. Invite your body to drop, to sink, to settle. Checking in first with the external body, physical body, noticing your feet, the pressure of one knee resting against the other. Any differences between your two hips or your shoulders? Does one shoulder feel heavier or lighter than the other? Observe what you feel underneath your hands. Texture, temperature, movement with the rise and fall of your breath. Any pulsing, gurgling, murmuring. And move a step closer internally, now exploring the pattern of your breath. And another step inward, exploring what's happening in your mind. How's the weather upstairs? Now extend your arms out to your sides like a T. Walk your feet just one step off of your mat. Right foot off to the right, left to the left. And we'll begin with some simple windshield wipers. Inhaling, the knees slowly drop to the left. Exhaling, returning to center. Inhaling, the knees go to the right. And continue. We'll take one more round from side to side and then finish up. Walk your feet back onto your mat when you've completed your last round. I'm going to have you roll to your left side. Here's where your blanket will come in handy. If you'll make your blanket into a rectangle pillow, like so. Then we're going to lie on our left side, head resting on our blanket pillow, and I have just above my ear, so like my temple up, resting on the blanket, not my ear, not my chin. Left arm out front, knees bent and stacked one on top of the other, right arm over left arm. So we'll start with what the physical therapy world calls open book. As you inhale, sweep your right arm up to the ceiling and back. And exhaling, bring your right arm up and over until it lands on your left foot. And then keep going. We'll do this 5 or 6 more times. Your head can just move organically on your blanket, rocking back and rocking forward. Let's go one more time, and this time we'll stay in the twist. You can keep your right arm straight or experiment with bending your right elbow and notice how that changes the sensation and the muscular action around your right shoulder. Of course, always keeping in mind, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. If your right arm is bent at the elbow, stretch it out to the right one more time, and then slowly we'll sweep the right arm up to the ceiling and over onto our left arm. And just pause for a couple of beats Right hand resting on left hand. And we'll roll over and do the other side. Same twist sequence. Now resting on our right side. Right arm stretching out front. Knees bent and stacked. Situating your blanket pillow appropriately. And then as you're ready to begin, inhaling, left arm sweeps up and back. And exhaling, back to center. On this next round, we'll stay in the twist. Maybe bend your left elbow, taking your left arm into a cactus shape. If your left arm is bent at the elbow, straighten it now. And you're ready to sweep your left arm up, bend over, resting left hand on right hand. And lift yourself up we'll come into Supta Baddha Konasana now, which means you'll take block to the head of your mat. Rectangle bolster makes a ramp on said block. The round bolster will come under your knees. And the blanket goes up top for a pillow. Now, I've said this before, but I think it's worth repeating. With regards to the block and the incline of your ramp, the higher the block, so the higher your ramp, the less intense it will be on your lower back. So if your low back is giving you some sass today from too much work in the garden or sitting or whatever, what have you, feel free to elevate your ramp a bit higher. The lower it is, the more extension happens through the lumbar spine. So take care of you and your body, because we can get new knees, new hips, new ankles, but we shan't be getting a new spine anytime soon. So take good care of your back. Once you have your ramp set up, scoot yourself towards that ramp, sweep your knees over the round bolster, and then come on down, adjusting your pillow. So you've got support under head and neck. And then draw your heels together and let your knees drop outward. So you do come up with this diamond shape through the legs and the knees, helping to facilitate the flow of lymph down the supinic vein that runs along the inseam of the leg. And here we are, Supta Baddha Konasana, reclining bound angle pose. Intentional and deliberate about our setup, intentional and deliberate about our breath, intentional and deliberate about taking rest. Now that you've had about a minute or so to acclimate to the support of the bolsters, acclimate to the shape in the pose, let's establish Samavriti Pranayama, that steady, same breath, that box breath. Using any number you like, I like to use the count of 4, inhaling for 4, exhaling for 4. Now, if you'd like, I'll give you the opportunity to establish those gaps at the top of the in breath, the bottom of the out breath. Finding those 1 or 2 beats of hang time, that stillness, that slight suspension, becoming aware of the gaps. We can begin expanding the gaps. Breathing in for 4 counts and suspending the breath for 4 counts. Breathing out for 4 counts and pausing for 4 counts. let go of the counting of your breath. And to move your fingers and your toes and stretch your legs down the length of your mat. Stretch your arms out to the sides or maybe up over your head. Place your arms at your side, bend your knees one at a time. Roll the bolster out from underneath your feet, settling your feet onto your mat. Then we'll roll over to one side, either side, and bring yourself up. Just long enough to change some props around. Take your rectangle bolster across the top of your mat, coming into lying side stretch. Bring your round bolster snug against your left hip. And then you'll drape your left waist over the bolster. Settle your head on the rectangle bolster so you've got plenty of space for your left shoulder and arm to rest onto the floor between the two cushions. Maybe take your right arm over your right ear. And you can keep your knees bent or stretch your legs down the length of your mat. If your legs are straight, you'll bend your knees, stacking right knee over left knee. If your right arm is over your head, bring it down to your side. Come up onto your left elbow, resting your head in your left hand. And then bring yourself all the way up. And we'll change sides. Bolster now settling against your right hip. Draping right waist over the round bolster. And here we go. Maybe left arm over left ear. And maybe legs straight or keep the knees bent. Totally up to you. Oh. If your legs are straight, you'll bend your knees. If your left arm is over your head, bring it back to your side. Come up onto your right elbow, rest your head in your hand. And then lift yourself up, clear your runway, and let's come into child's pose. You're welcome to place a bolster underneath your torso, or just bring your head down to the floor. Now we're going to take a very low version of thread the needle. So we're going to keep hips down on heels, but thread your right arm across your mat underneath your left arm. Bringing the right side of your head down to the floor or resting your head on a bolster. Place your left hand into the floor so you can lift yourself up, unthread your right arm, and then we'll go to the other side. Left arm comes onto the floor between the right elbow and the right knee. Turn your head to the right. Placing your right hand into the floor, push the floor away from you so you can bring your left hand back to the mat. Now we'll set up for our final Shavasana. And you will need both of your blocks at the foot of your mat on their tallest height, about 6 inches apart from one another. And then settle your rectangle bolster across the mat. Place your round bolster on top. Slide your blanket behind you so it can be used as a pillow. We're going to come down onto our back, sweeping our knees over the bolster stack, positioning ourselves and the props in such a way that our heels will rest on the blocks. Really important, in my humble opinion. Keep the heels grounded on something. So resting heels to blocks, knees over bolsters, and then back comes down onto the floor. Good time to put on your fuzzy socks, or maybe grab an additional blanket over your body. Sandbags are terrific. A terrific addition in this shape. If you had a 10-pound sandbag, you would place it across your abdomen where your hip points are, right across, right just above the pubic bone and below the navel. Very grounding and somewhat compressing, gently compressing the SI joints into the floor, which is a really nice feeling. Arms at your sides, you can go palms up, or you can end as we began, taking one hand to your belly, one hand to your low ribs. Ranger. Stop. At this point, you can draw your breath back into that ratio. Well, no, not ratio. The box breath. Breathing in for 4, pausing for 4. Breathing out for 4. And pausing for 4. Whenever that begins to feel fairly effortless for you, then we can explore pulling the ratio breath into the picture. Breathing in for 4, pausing for 4, breathing out for 8, pausing for 4. And maybe you breathe out for 6 for several rounds, acclimating your breath, your lungs, your vascular system to this trend. Take 2 more breaths like this, being quite intentional with your breath, quite deliberate with resting your body. And then simply rest. No more manipulating or counting. Just taking intentional and deliberate rest. Begin to move your fingers and toes. Draw in a deeper breath and stretch your arms and your legs. Pull your knees up to your chest, one leg at a time. And then roll yourself over to one side. And come up, sitting. So you can bring hands together. Base of your thumbs to your forehead for an intentional mind. Fingertips rest to your lips for intentional words. And then hands placed at your heart for an intentional heart. Great. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.